Good morning, everyone. Happy Saturday morning. Hope everyone is having a good day so far. I am just going to take a minute to go make sure this video is in fact working. 1 second here. Oh, there we are. Okay. Lovely. Well, good morning again, everyone. And happy Saturday, happy weekend, and I believe happy first day of spring today. Hopefully you're all having nice spring weather wherever you are. So this morning, we are going to make a couple of cards using the Sand and Sea suite. And just to show you, this is the stamp set here. These images are not at full size. So the actual stamps are a lot bigger than this shows. You'll see when we start stamping. But yeah, I really like this one with the different seashells. And I like that they have these little, kind of look like splotches, but you'll notice that these line up with the shells. So I'm not going to do this technique today, but one thing you can do is stamp the shell outline in one color and then stamp the splotch in a different color right over top. And it looks really cool. And you have those for several of the shells. Anyway, so that's the stamp set. And then there's an embossing folder that we're going to be using today. And then there is a set of dies that we're also going to be using today. And we are going to be making these two cards today. So I'll hold this one up a little closer so you can see. And so this is all die cut and embossed. And then this one, we're gonna be embossing this and die cutting these guys. So let's see, which one do we want to start with? Let's start with the blue one, why not? Okay, so to make sure that we've got everything we need, for this, you are going to need, 1 second, here we are. So I'm using Balmy Blue, and this is 8.5 by 5.5 for the card base. You're going to need a piece of vanilla that is 5 1/4 by 4, and that's going to go on the inside of the card. I've got another smaller piece of Balmy Blue that's 5 inches by 3 3/4 inches. I've got a piece of the Sand and Sea designer paper. I don't know if you can really see the detail on there, but it looks kind of like sand on a beach, this one, and has shells on the other side. There's lots of really cool papers in this set, but this is one I'm going to be using today. And this one is 3 inches by 2 inches. I've got a piece of the Pearlescent paper. So I know this probably just looks like vanilla, but it's actually got a little bit of sparkle to it. I don't know if it's going to show up on the camera, but when you see it in person, it's actually got a little bit of shine and sparkle to it. It's really pretty. And this one is 2.5 inches by 1.5 inches. We need 3 little squares of vanilla that we're going to put our seashells on. So one 2 inches by 2 inches, one at 1.5 by 1.5 inches, and one at 1 inch by 1 inch. And then I've got 2 pieces of this lovely fine art ribbon. These are 5 inches long, and if I tilt it to the light, you can hopefully see. So it's a linen ribbon, and it's got gold flecks all throughout it. Very pretty. Okay, so I'm going to set all that aside. Now, the first thing we're actually going to do today on this card is stamp our sentiment. If you're using this pearlescent paper, one thing to keep in mind is it takes a bit for the ink to dry. So when you first stamp on it, the ink will smudge very easily. So you have to be careful when you're using this. So I'm going to get the Night of Navy ink pad, and I neglected to grab my stamping bucket. So I'm just going to quickly grab that. There we are. And open up the Night of Navy. Hello, Carla. Thanks for joining. And we want our stamp. So you'll see inside the stamp set, there's actually two little sets here, one that's got a bunch of the shells and one that's got the sentiments and some of the smaller pieces. And so for this card, I am using, where did it go? Happy birthday. I lost it. Oh, there it is. So this one, you are unique and completely amazing. There we go. Grab that. Set that down so I can get it straight and put it on the block. Hello, Glenda. Thank you. Glad you like the card so far. Okay, we'll get our ink and we're going to just stamp right down in the center of this pearlescent paper and lift straight up. And now be very careful with this. As I mentioned, it will smudge. So just kind of grab it by the edges and we're just going to set that out of the way. And we'll let that dry while we build the rest of the card. Okay, close my ink pad here and clean my stamp. There we go. Feeling a little disorganized this morning, so please bear with me if things aren't going along quite smoothly, but we'll get there. We'll make lovely cards and we'll have fun. Okay, so what are we going to do next? I am going to take the card base, which I have scored at, yeah, Glenda says if you can't see it, she says it's her very favorite sweet. I think it's my favorite sweet as well. I love this sweet. Particularly fitting since I live in Tofino and we have lots of beaches. All right, so I've got the card base, the 8.5 by 5.5, and I've got it scored at 4.25. So I'm just going to fold that. If you don't have it scored, that's okay. Just fold it over so that the edges meet. And we will, you know what, I'm going to use this block. I have a bone folder, which I left in the other room because as I mentioned, I'm not very organized today for whatever reason, but that's okay. I just ran my stamp block up and down the side just to make that fold nice and crisp. Set that to the side. And we're going to use this other smaller piece of the Balmy Blue, and we are going to emboss that. So just get this embossing folder out here. And this is, I love this embossing folder. I get my fingers out from my, actually you can kind of see it easier when my hand's behind there. So there's the different shells all in here. It's absolutely beautiful embossing folder. And Carla says it's her favorite too. Yes, the cutting and embossing. We're going to do that on the next card where we cut and emboss all together. It's really cool. This one, we're just going to do the embossing. So I'm going to set that in there. Now this piece is a bit smaller than the whole folder. That's okay. Just kind of get it in the middle there and get my little platform here. And so I'm actually going to show you this. So one thing, the Stampin' Up! 3D embossing folders fit absolutely beautifully in the Stampin' Up! Cut and emboss machine. But I realized that not everybody has one of those yet. Oh, good morning, Norma. Thanks for joining. So if you do not yet have one of the Stampin' Up! Cut and emboss machines, you can use another one, but you might have to use a shim. So what I mean by that is if I put in both my regular plates on this machine, this will be too thick and it won't go through my machine. So what I'm going to do is I still have my base and I'm going to put some cardstock on there and this, and then my top plate, and that creates exactly the right thickness to run this through my embossing machine. So that's how you can still use the Stampin' Up! Folders if you do not yet have the Stampin' Up! Machine. Okay, set that aside. Get this guy out of here and set that aside. We're going to use that again on the next card, so don't put it too far. And there is our emboss. So you'll see this side is kind of indented, the shells, and this side, they're raised. So you can use whichever side you like. I'm going to use the side that's raised here. And so what we're going to do is, this is going to go on here, but we want this ribbon to be here. So we're going to need to attach that first. So what we'll do is, I'm just going to kind of set that there. See where we kind of want ribbon there-ish. Okay, so kind of the middle. So I am going to flip over this embossed piece. So this is now what I'm using as the back side. And I'm going to run a bit of Stampin' Seal down either end of this. No, if it doesn't start, use the trick where you run it on your hand or use your thumb. There. Oh, you know what? I think this one's at the end, but that's okay because I have another one. Just need to get that one started. There we go. Now we've got some. So I've just got a little bit of English, Jen, a little bit of adhesive on either end of this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the ribbon, and I'm going to just fold the edges around onto, oh, 1 second. I had the adhesive too far in. Add a little bit more. Do that again. Fold the edge around to the back side onto that adhesive. It sticks really well to fingers as well. And do that for the next piece. And I'm going to leave a little gap between the pieces of ribbon, like so. Okay, so now you can see those little ends of the ribbon are held down by that adhesive we put on a minute ago. And now I'm going to run adhesive all the way around because now we want to attach this piece. You can run right over the ribbon and put adhesive all the way around this, like so. And we're going to unstick it from my fingers. And let's see, do I want it that way? I think I'm going to put that way so the seaweed is kind of going up to the top. And we'll get that centered, at least approximately centered. And we'll set that down, and then that can be set aside just for a minute. And I'm going to get the 3 little pieces of vanilla. So again, this is 2 by 2, 1.5 by 1.5, and 1 by 1. And we're going to stamp and cut these shells. Grab the stamps here. So, let's do I call these sand dollars, but they're also called mermaid coins, which is kind of cool. I don't know why the sand dollar came up, but anyway, that's what we call them. We actually can find them on the beaches here. It's really neat. And I'm going to stamp this in Saffron, and this one's going on the 2 by 2 piece of cardstock. Ink that up and stamp that on there. Clean my stamp. My Stampin' Chamois always squeaks every time I clean the stamp. I find it highly amusing. All right, let's swap stamps. Put the sand dollar away and grab the sea star. Yes, I call them sea stars. I know most people call them starfish, but they're not a fish, so I call them sea stars. And we're going to use Highland Heather to stamp that guy. And this one's going on the middle piece, the 1.5 by 1.5. Get ink on that. Yes, Glenda, I also love the beach walking and treasure hunting. I don't bring them home, but I love finding them. It's really cool. I was at Cox Bay the other day and there was a bunch on there. You're coming here soon, aren't you, Glenda? I can't remember when. It'll be nice to, we'll have to go for a beach walk. All right, stamp my little sea star on there. Oh, that smudged a little bit, so I'm going to use the other side. That's why cardstock has two sides. There we go, that's better. Clean that and put the Highland Heather away. I have to admit, excuse me, I have to admit that I deliberately chose the Highland Heather because it's almost the right shade for the purple ochre stars that you can see in the beaches around here. What am I looking for now? That little guy right there. I'll grab that little one. So there is, where's the other? So there's three sort of clamshells. They're not all clams, but they look kind of like clamshells in here. So there's this little guy here, which we're not using on this one. And then there's this large one with the lines and sort of the gradients there, which we're also not using on this card. And then this was the tiniest little guy that's just got the ridges there. That's the one I'm using on this card, but use a different one if you prefer. And, oh, tomorrow, Glenda's coming tomorrow, yay! It'll be so nice to see you. All right, so I'm using some color or other. Petal Pink, there we go. To stamp this. I know that these guys are not normally pink, but hey, it's my card. I can have a pink clam if I want to. There we go. Clean that, put that ink pad away. And I'm gonna put that stamp away. So now we are going to cut out all three of these. So I'm gonna grab my machine again, and with all the plates, because the dies that you fit no matter what machine you're using, as far as I know. So we can cut all three of these guys at the same time. So this die here is your sand dollar. We'll line that up in a sec. This one obviously is the sea star. And then this little guy, oops, I'm off camera, this little guy here, Glenda says, think no snow in the past. I don't think it's been snowing much lately, although you would know because Ted would have been out plowing if it was snowing. But it's been nice and warm here, so you should be okay. Anyway, so yes, this little guy here is the one that I'm using for this. So if you haven't used these dies before, you'll see, let me use the bigger one, it'll be easier to see. So this side is completely smooth, and this side has a little, you can kind of see the shadow, there's a little ridge in it. That ridge is what cuts the cardstock, so you want to make sure that the ridge goes down. And we'll line that one up there. Now these dies never line up absolutely 100%. They're designed to give a little bit of a border around the image. So put that guy on there, and we'll put that guy on there. And I'm just going to move this over to my machine. And of course, they slid slightly when I moved it, so I'm just going to line them up again. I'll be back in a second. I'm going to make sure that I'm getting these as close to lined up as I can get them. And run that through the machine there. I love being able to cut out shapes. It's so much fun. Yesterday was ugly up in the past. Oh dear. Well, hopefully tomorrow will be better. Okay, so there's our sea star. I'm just gonna toss my bits to the side. There is my little clam. And there is, oh, I got that off center, but that's okay. It'll still work. And I'm just gonna set these dies back with their friends over there and get this out of the way. Okay, so next, I want to leave the sentiment for another minute just so we can be sure it's really, really dry. So I'm going to do the inside of the card, and I'll pull that up here. So I just stamped the sand dollar on the inside. So we'll get my block and get the sand dollar back and the So Saffron ink back. Probably would have been good to do that at the time I was stamping with this, but that's okay. Get that guy inked up and we'll just put it down in the corner there. Clean that off and put that away again. And yep, got ink on my finger. You know, it's a good day when you end up with ink on your fingers. And put that away. And so that's all I did on the inside. You can certainly add more shells or some of the little seaweed here if you like, whatever you would like. And I'm going to put the stamp and seal on the back. Yes, I do have the lid off. That makes it a lot easier. There, all the way around, and get the card, and that was just a little bit of gold from the ribbon. We will center this on the inside like so. All right, so now we need our piece of designer paper and we need the sentiment that we stamped earlier. I'm still going to be careful with it because, as I say, this can smudge a little bit. So I'm still going to be a little careful and just hold it by the edges here. We do need to put adhesive on this. So just set it down carefully and just run a little bit of adhesive without moving it around too much if you can. Get the adhesive started. There we go. And I'm going to run a piece down the middle. Okay, so I don't know if you can see, but it actually, the sentiment is right there. So it wasn't completely dry, but because I held it still, it didn't smudge. So there we are. We can center that on our designer paper here. And again, I'm trying to be careful not to touch the ink. And now this I put on dimensionals. So that's going to make it easier because I can just hold this and stick dimensionals on and not have to worry about the ink. I like doing one in each corner and one in the middle just to give it a bit of support in the center there. I love these guys because they just give it that added, and well, literally a little bit of dimension, hence the name. But I just like that it adds that little extra bit of interest to the card rather than it being all flat. Okay, we'll get our card base here and turn the sentiment so it's right side up. I mean, you can put it on upside down if you really wish, but I'm going to put mine right side up. And get that approximately centered there. And then these guys I put on with dimensionals as well. So I'm going to do a couple dimensionals on the sand dollar and one on the sea star. That's funny. So if you remember, I smudged the sea star the first time, and so I turned it over. And so now when I die cut, I have the center of a sea star on the back. I don't know, I find these things amusing. Okay, one on there, one on the back of the little clamshell. And before I remove the backing, I'm just gonna kind of see. Yeah, I want it there-ish. Okay. So take the backing off that. I'll put that back. And so it's gonna be kind of half across the sentiment and partially onto the card base there. And our sea star can go there. And last but not least, our little clamshell. Kind of go, let's do it at an angle like that. There. Okay, so final step. Because we need something sparkly on here. I know we have the ribbon, but that's not quite enough sparkly. So I'm going to add some Wink of Stella. And if you haven't seen this, it's basically a little paintbrush that does clear glitter paint. which I like a whole lot. So I am going to put this, I just put it in the center of the sand dollar, just on the 5 little ridges in the middle there. And there's, it actually, you probably can't see it, but it has the word push right there. So I'm just squeezing gently just to get it to come out. And then this guy, I'm going to paint the whole upper portion of the shell. And then the sea star, I'm just going to go along the lines in the center of each arm here. There. And then I'm going to go back and do it again, just to add a bit more of the sparkle. It's a really subtle effect. You probably, I'll pick it up in a second. You probably won't be able to really see it on the camera, but when you see it in person, there's just a really nice subtle sparkle effect to it. And go over that guy one more time. All right, there we go. Set that aside, and there's our card. And I don't know if I can, I don't think I can. Yeah, I don't think you can really see the sparkle on the camera, but trust me, there's sparkle on there, and we like sparkle. And so that's our first card done. I'm gonna set that one off to the side here. And I'm putting my new one on top of my old one so that I don't smudge the wink of Stella. All right. I'm gonna just wait for 1 second, just in case some folks are still finishing up that card. Just give everybody a minute. Oh, I'll get some, there's some gold from the ribbon. That's what I'll do. I'll brush the gold from the ribbon off. There we go. Okay, so this is our next card. And this is the one where we're gonna do what Carla was talking about, where we cut and emboss the same piece of cardstock. All right, so let's get our bits and pieces here. So I've got my soft sea foam base. Again, I scored it, but if you didn't score, just fold it over so the edges match. There, and I'm going to use my pretend bone folder. There we go. All right, and then I am again using this sand colored, looks like beach sand. There you can get a better view. That's the other side with the shells on there. I really like that one with the different colors. That's fun, but I was going, because I'm going to color these stamps, I didn't want to use the 2 different colors. So I'm going to go with a neutral background, and we can just stick that right onto our card base. There we go. Get our stamp and seal on there. And then we will, thanks Glenda, I really like this card. And then we will center this approximately. In case you haven't discovered this, you will never, ever, I shouldn't say never, 99.99% of the time, you will not get these on straight, and that's fine. It's a homemade card. It's not supposed to be perfect. It's supposed to be made with love. All right, so that is that. Oh, you know what? I forgot that we have to stamp on the pearlescent. So let's get that done. So there's another little piece of the pearlescent, and I'm going to use the happy birthday stamp. Get that and my block. And I'm going to stamp that with Pear Pizzaz. I didn't do the soft sea foam because it's such a subtle color. I used the Pear Pizzaz just so it stands out a little bit more. And get that inked up. So again, we're going to be careful with this so we don't smudge the ink. There, and just set that out of the way so it can dry. And clean my stamp. Hi, Maria. Thanks for joining. And I'm going to close my stamp pad, maybe. There we go. More ink on the fingers. Yay. Set that aside. Put my stamp away. I'm a clean as I go type of stamper. Some people, they just have stuff everywhere. I can't do it. I just can't do it. Okay, so you should have 2 pieces. They're the same size, so they are 5 1/4 by 4. You just need one of them right now. The other one's going to go on the inside at some point. Right now, what we're going to do is this layer with all the shells on it. So the first thing we're actually going to do is die cut it. And for this, you're going to use this big, this is all one piece minus the sand dollar that was in the middle. So this die is all one big piece. And we're going to put that in here, build our die cutting sandwich. And the die is going to extend ever so slightly off the edges of the cardstock. That's fine. Just get it so that you've got, for sure, your shells are on there, and the little bits of seaweed that stick off the end is fine. That won't matter. Okay, and send this through the machine. 1 second, I have an argument with my die cutting machine. Hang on half a second. Sorry, folks. For some reason, my die cutting machine is being grumpy at the moment. Okay, let's try this again. Well, isn't that interesting? Okay. One more try. Okay, there we go. It was just a little tight, but we got it. Okay. So pick that up, and there's going to be all these little bits. Just set them off to the side. Scrape my die cutting plate here so I don't have the bits stuck on it. And put that to the side. And my die away. And we want to get these bits. So there's little bits kind of in the center of the seaweed. Most of them have come off. Okay, there we go. I'm going to scoop these last little bits off and toss them aside as well. Okay, so now we're left with this piece that has the shells and the seaweed, and we want to stamp before we emboss. For this card, you can emboss and then stamp and get a completely different effect, but for what I was doing on my card today, we're going to stamp first. If you emboss first, then the ink just kind of hits the ridges of the embossed image, which is also a really neat effect, especially if you use the sponges or the blending brushes to put it on. But I want to get full color today. So I am going to stamp now. I'm going to get my shells. So I'm using this Nautilus one first. And that one I did in the pink, the Blushing Bride I've got here. Ink that one up. And so you can see I'm kind of pressing down like that, but one other option, if you want to make sure I can see there's ink all over my stamp, but the other option is set the stamp down on the table and press the ink pad down onto the stamp, and then you can see where you're getting the ink. And so this will line up with this shape. I'm just going to pull it a bit closer to myself here. And again, you're not going to get it absolutely exact, just get it close. And make sure you press down firmly all over the stamp, because we want to get all that nice, lovely detail there. Clean that one off. And put away the pink and switch stamps. Next seashell. That kind of goes there. And one other thing, you've probably seen this before, but if I try to do that, it's going to come off the edges and I'm not going to get a nice image. And excuse me 1 second, something just showed up on Facebook here. Let me just, yep, everything's still fine. Okay, sorry about that. So what I'm going to do to avoid this coming off the edges here is I am going to put it at an angle. You can always get a bigger block too if you like, but if you put it at an angle, then it goes on there nicely. And this one is in Mint Macaron. And this one I am gonna apply the ink this way to make sure that I get, there's a lot of little detail on these stamps. They're absolutely beautiful and I love all the detail and we want to make sure we get ink on all the details so we can see it. And that one goes up here and you'll see this end's kind of stubby and this end's longer, and you'll see this end's kind of stubby and this end's longer. So you can line that up so it goes there. And again, press down firmly. Yeah, I'm getting them off center today, but that's all right. I'm a little off center, so that's fine. I'm going to close that stamp pad. And yes, this is a little bit fiddly because you're switching stamps and switching inks, but trust me, it's worth it. And I'm going to get this little guy next. Him on there, and I'm using Balmy Blue for this little guy. Add the ink to that one. Sometimes you get the ink, I don't know if you can see it, but I've got a bit of ink on the edge of my block there. Just going to rub that off with my thumb so I don't end up with a smudge on my card. Bring this over and stamp this guy on here. Clean that one and put the blue away. And where did that one go? That one went there. And next, I'm actually, so when I originally did the card, I used this stamp that we just used on the last card. I'm going to do it slightly differently today, and I'm going to use this little scallop here just because I feel like doing it slightly differently. And we're going to get our Saffron again and do that one. Make sure he's got ink on him there. And so this one is going in the small space. So you see there's two sort of similarly shaped spots, but one's smaller and one's larger. So this little scallop is going in this small space. And I'm just putting the base of the scallop down where this flat piece is. There, that looks nice. Clean that. Put our Saffron to the side. And where are we? Put that stamp away. And then for the last one, so the last one's not in this set. You have to grab this other piece again, and we're going to use this large one that's got the gradients on it. Get that, and that is again in Highland Heather. And we'll put ink on that one. There. And you can kind of see there's three little scallops here that match the base of the stamp and then the wide the top is. So I'm going to flip that around into it this way and get that at least somewhat lined up. There we are. Clean that. Close that ink pad. Okay, and I'm going to put that stamp away. So now the last thing is to color in our seaweed, and I've got my soft sea foam Stampin' Right marker. There's the two ends. So there's the thick end that's like a paintbrush or a felt pen, and the thin end is like a ballpoint. And because I'm coloring in broad spaces here, I'm going to use this. So this again takes a few minutes, but we're just going to use this to color in. And you can go as close to or as far away from your shells on the edges here where the seaweed kind of runs into the gap around the shells. So you can color right up to the edge of your shell if you like. I am choosing to leave a little bit of space there. And the other thing is this doesn't have to be absolutely 100% covered. If you look at seaweed in the ocean, it's not all exactly the same shade all the way down. There's gradients in the colors. So if you get a little darker in some spots, a little lighter in some spots, that is perfectly fine. Looks a little closer to natural. Let's keep going around here. Oh, you know what? I just realized that I didn't double check my supply list before I started this morning, and I neglected to grab my Tombo glue that we're going to need to adhere this. Remember earlier when I said I wasn't very organized today? There we go. So once I finish coloring, I will run and get that, and that will give you guys a chance to finish your coloring if you haven't yet. And this is why I normally double check my supply list before I start crafting. Today I didn't, and consequently I'm missing something. Okay, I'm just kind of filling in these little in-between bits. Again, you don't have to, it's your card. You can color wherever you like. Down over here. There, okay, and now we've just got these top pieces left. Let's quickly get some color in here. And there's that guy. And now we've got these big ones are a little easier, faster to fill in. And the other thing is I've got scrap paper underneath because you can maybe see there's a whole bunch of little green bits down there now because I want to color right to the edge of the seaweed. So consequently, I'm kind of coloring off the edge a bit, which is fine. That's why I've got the scrap paper underneath. Almost done. Just last tiny little bit here. Oh, fill in that top bit that I missed there. Okay. And so I have to apologize. It's going to be silent just for a second while I grab that glue that I forgot. My apologies, ladies. Be right back. Okay, I am back. Sorry about that. The really funny part is I did a full supply list and put it up so that you would all have your supplies, and then I forgot mine. Okay, so this is the Tombo multi-liquid glue. Excuse me. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to use a combination of the Stampin' Seal in this. So these bigger shells, I'm going to actually apply a bit of Stampin' Seal to those. Run it on the hand to get it started. So just wherever you can kind of fit that in there. You don't want to go off the edge of the shells because then it'll come through to the front and make the front of your card sticky, which we don't want. So just run a few pieces on there. Another one on this shell. Yep. There we go. And even a little bit on that last little shell there. And then we're going to use the Tombo on the seaweed because if you just run the Stampin' Seal over this, it's going to go through and first of all, it'll stick this to your scrap paper. But then, as I say, when you flip it over, you'll have some sticky on the front of your project, which we don't want. So I am going to just put a little bit of this Tombo adhesive on the seaweed pieces. And you don't have to get every single spot, just so that each area of the card has some is good enough. Add some there, get a bit over on this piece here. And you can add some of this Tombo to the shells as well if you like, just to be sure they're going to stick. There and down in this corner. And I'm going to add a bit to that guy because I don't think the Stampin' Seal really went on there. Okay, there. So that was just a really quick, just spreading bits around. This doesn't have to be exact. And so we're going to take this and we're going to bring back this card base with the sand paper that we did earlier. And we're going to apply this. Now the seaweed bits are going to extend over the edge of the sand designer paper that we're using. That's okay. Just make sure they're inside the edges of the card base itself. So you can see if you look up the top here, it extends a little bit, and same down at the bottom, but it's within the confines of the whole card. So that's what we're going for. That way it'll still go in the envelope. Just press that down. Add a bit of adhesive there. The one nice thing with the Tombo, you just rub it with your finger and it's gone. And if you do ever happen to get some of that Tombo on the front of your card, you can do the same thing. Just use your thumb to rub it off. All right, so that is ready to go. We are going to carefully get our happy birthday sent. Oh, I stuck it down without embossing it. Oh dear. I can't believe I did that. Well, what we can do, no, I can't emboss that because it's stuck. Okay, so apparently we're not embossing this one. What I can do though, I'm going to use this other piece of vanilla that was going to go on the inside, and I'm going to quickly cut it and then run this through the embossing so that you can see how that process works. So let me cut this other one. Means I won't have one for the inside, but that's okay. I can add an inside piece another time. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly cut one more, and then I'll show you how you can line it up to emboss it. I'm not going to do all of the coloring again. We won't go through all of that. Set the die aside. Get all the pieces off here. There. Put the pieces to the side. I am so sorry if you have applied your piece to the card front and we haven't embossed. Okay, so now, had I been doing this the right way around, we would have stamped and colored, and then we would be looking at embossing. So when you have this die cut piece, you can see, oh, I have one more bit in there. We'll get rid of that. So you can see on here, there's the nautilus, and then that long elongated one, and then there's the little clam and the seaweed. So this, it's opposite to this. So I'm just going to flip this over so that this lines up, and you will see that this all fits together. So this shell fits in here, the seaweed all lines up here. We've got this nautilus down here. So when you do that, and you can kind of feel with your thumb that it's in, like there's a little indentation here that's going to do the embossing. So we're just going to get that so it's kind of snapped in place almost there. And you can tell by lining up the seaweed and then close that down. And now you can see, probably not on the camera, but when you're doing it yourself, you'll be able to see that these are all lined up. And we are going to run this through the machine and emboss it. My cardstock shim there, put that on. run this through the embossing machine. Now, as I say, normally, had I been awake today and we had done this properly, we would have cut and then stamped and then embossed. So this is what it looks like when it's cut and colored, stamped, but not embossed. And this is what it looks like when it's cut and embossed, but not colored. So you can see the texture on here, and it's lined up exactly with the shells that are on there. All right, so now, normally this would be the piece that was cut, colored, and embossed, and you would apply that to the card front. Again, my apologies, ladies. Did not sleep well last night, so there we go. So now we will take our, fortunately, it still looks really pretty this way, even without the embossing. Now we will take our sentiment that we stamped on the pearlescent paper earlier. Oh, thanks, Norma. And again, I'm just going to be careful with this in case it's not quite dry. And I'm going to put a couple of Stampin' Dimensionals on this and one in the middle. Take the backing off these. Oh, maybe I'll take the backing off these. There we go. And I am going to put the sentiment up in this top corner. Obviously, you can put it anywhere you would like. Set that down there. Okay, and then the finishing touch is the opal rounds. These are part of the Sand and Sea suite. Get them out of the package here. So these guys, there's small and large ones, and they're clear, but they've got almost like glitter in them. So it's sort of like a pearlescent opal-y effect. You can actually see I've colored two here. If you have the Stampin' Blends pens, you can color these if you wish, but for this card, I'm going to use the clear ones. And I'm just going to, one of these guys, oops. I'm going to throw it on the table because, you know, that's helpful. And maybe I will pick up one of these guys. There we go. And I'm going to put one in the center of this Nautilus here. And then I'm going to put one of the smaller ones up in the corner of the sentiment. There, and let's see, let's do a couple other ones. Do we want a big one somewhere? Let's see. Let's put a big one over here. And maybe we'll put another small one down over here. Oh, I picked it up without the glue, so I'm just going to stick it back. The glue stayed behind, so I'm just going to stick it back on there. There we go. Now I can get it. If that happens and you can't get the glue, just use a glue dot or a drop of the Tombo glue, and then you can adhere it, but they do have their own adhesive. Okay, so there we are. And there is our card. So let me grab the other one. That's our two cards for today. So I hope that you were able to craft along and that you enjoyed. Oh, thanks, Carla. I appreciate the compliment. And I hope you have fun with this Sand and Sea suite. I absolutely love it. Next week, I am going to be doing the March paper pumpkin. I was hoping to give you a little sneak peek today, but it hasn't arrived yet. I'm not getting it until Monday or Tuesday, but it will definitely be here for next week. So next week, we're going to work together to put together our March paper pumpkin kit. And I hope you have a wonderful week. And if you have any questions, please let me know. And otherwise, I will see everyone next Saturday. Bye, guys.